Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I thought I would do my annual video of my garden plan. So where I'm planning to put everything, how I'm planning to organize everything in my garden for this coming growing season, 2023 spring. It's February right now. This is a good time of year to buy seeds and think about all that sort of stuff. It's a little bit early for getting transplants started, in my opinion, but definitely a good time of year to buy seeds and think about where everything should go. Especially the larger your garden is, the more effort that takes. So let me walk you through my process here. All I do is I go to the seed provider's website. I work through the thing. You know, most of them are organized alphabetically, right? So I pick some. Oh, okay. I start at the top and I start at A and work my way all the to T, sort of thing, right? I pick the beans. I pick the beets I want. I pick the broccoli I want, and so on and so forth, right? And I make a list. So this year I've gotten most of my stuff from Vessey's. I'm also getting some stuff from Hudson Valley Seed. I'm getting some eggplant from them. They have an Amish paste tomato as well, right? So paste tomatoes, Amish paste tomato. I'm getting that one, and I'm getting they have an Asian green there. We started using a lot more of this sort of stuff in our diet recently, so I'm kind of committing to it. They're healthy, they keep well, they're great. So this is Kailan, I think that's how you pronounce that. Anyway, it's kind of a broccoli type green, but very fast growing. So ideally early season and maybe even a fall crop type thing, right? So I'm definitely going to give that a go. But anyway, I work my way through that list, make a big long wish list, and then in Excel, I try to find a place for everything to go. And there's a lot of decisions you have to make when you're doing that. So let me just walk you through how I went about doing all of that. And let me just say, you know, this year my garden has been reorganized. It's laid out differently than previous years because I put this big pond in here. So I put a big pond in, and the center of the garden where it says peppers, squash, beets, I had apple tree here and a pear tree and all kinds of blueberry bushes. I took all of those out and I made a row of blueberries down here, and I gotta have a row of trees down here. And so all those beds, there was like 9 beds, maybe even 10. I can't remember how many there was. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 4x8 beds over here. And now that's all just trees and bushes, trees and berry bushes, that whole section, because they're high, right? If you look at going to the right is south, going to the left is north. You don't want, I had trees and bushes in the middle. You don't want a high thing in the middle of your garden where you've got things, you know, on the other side of that where the sun's going to be casting shade, right? Your whole garden runs on sunlight. At least where I live, where sunlight, you got to get all the sunlight you can. So you don't want to have these big things in the middle of the garden casting shade. In previous years, things have grown fine on this side of the garden because the bushes and the trees that were in the middle just weren't that big. Now everything's getting big, it's causing problems. So I ripped it all out and moved it all. And maybe I killed it, maybe I didn't, I don't know. We'll see. I did all that in the fall. But I gave up about 10 beds of space, and I'm only replacing it I'm gaining. This is a 4x8, this is an 8x8, this is a 4x8. So I lost some space. Now on the good side, because everything is going to be getting better sun, I think I'm getting better space. Less space, but better space. And also, I'm doing a bunch of things to kind of maximize the space that I do have. So like a lot of these stone beds, I actually made them a little longer, like from right to left. I made this one large. I made this one about 40% larger, and I made each of these about 30% larger. This bed here, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to join. Notice how it's kind of fat at the bottom and long and narrow like this. Has a very conspicuous shape. Let's just leave it at that. Anyway, I'm going to join these two together, okay? And then I'm going to make a little space in between, and I'm actually going to make this skinny part longer and use that because I got just this dead space here. What's the point of that, right? So I'm going to make it longer, right? So I'm going to turn these two beds I'm going to make this bed bigger and this one bigger, right? There's all these things you're doing to sort of optimize and make the best use of the space. So even though I lost some space back here, I think I'm going to be using the space that I have better, and it's going to have better sun. All right, now The process is you got your list of things that you want, and then you figure out a place to put everything. And if you can't figure out a place to put everything, you can't have it. All right, that's the deal, right? Um, so just walking through, kind of what I did is that this top corner here is kind of shady because it's right against the trees and stuff, right? So I've committed in March, I'm going to go at some of these trees and cut some of them down. I still got lots of trees left, but the trees, I got trees literally with branches reaching right over the garden. They're making so much shade, just things won't grow that well. I mean, if you live somewhere like Texas or some really, really hot place, that shade can be important for your garden. But where I live, shade does nothing. It just, for a vegetable garden anyway, it doesn't really do any good. I suppose there's an argument for some particular things where shade can help, but generally speaking, it's not doing anything good. So I noticed some greens like spinach and certain kind of various. I planted different Asian greens here last year, so I'm going to do the same thing this year with some degree of rotation. I'm going to put a potato here, like a red Norland, something I can plant earlier in the season because as the season runs on, the trees start to leaf out and things get shadier. So anything you can get growing in May, maybe you can get some more growth out of it that way, right? But also there's an opportunity for some greens to plant them in August, and the trees lose their leaves in fall, and maybe you can get some growth in September, October, that sort of thing. So that's what's going there. Here, this is kind of interesting. This is spinach, soybean, and F-bean, right? So that means I'm going to plant spinach, and then really early in the season, right? Like I'm going to use one of my domes, and I'm going to plant spinach there in March, maybe even end of April or end of February, March or February. Probably March, right? I've found that with one of these plastic domes, I can get spinach growing in March if everything works. By the time the spinach is kind of getting done, remember you're starting it early in March, so it's done earlier, it's done ahead of schedule as well. I found that I can plant beans right down the middle. So at some point in late May, I'll plant 2 rows of beans right down the middle. It says F beans because they're Vortex bean, right? It says over here Vortex. I planted them last year. Big, long, delicious, vigorous bean. And they climb really high, right? So I put a trellis right down the middle. I train those really high. And then on either side of the beans, you can plant something because you got all that space, right? It's a 4x8 garden. You're just using up the middle for your trellis. So I think I'll plant some of these soybeans on either side. My daughter wants soybeans, so I think I'll put them there. I could put them here. I'm leaving this. I got a little tiny bed here. I might break this up. I don't know what I'm going to do exactly, but I might, put them here. I don't know what I'm going to do. Anyway, I'll have some kind of bush bean on either side of the trellis bean. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. Same with here, right? It says spinach and R bean. It's a Romano bean. It's sort of a fat green bean. So I plant spinach early in the season, and when the spinach starts, late at some point in late May, when it's okay to plant beans, I'll plant the Romano beans in that same bed. Here I'm going to I've got garlic planted last fall, right? Here I'm doing my classic potatoes and peas. I think the bed where it says garlic was potatoes and peas last year. You plant your peas down the middle, plant them nice and early. And then when it's warm enough to plant potatoes, you plant the potatoes on either side of the peas, right? You plant the peas, the climbing pea on a trellis lengthwise. Plant the potatoes on either side, and by the time you're supposed to harvest the potatoes, the peas are completely done anyway. It works out really, really well. It's a great combination, potatoes and peas. Here I'm going to put cucumber. And as you've seen, it says plus D plus P. That just means cucumber down the middle. And on one side, I'm going to have dill. On the other side, I'm going to have parsley. I find those will work really well. You can get a lot out of them. If you got nice, productive, these are pickling cucumbers I plant. All the cucumbers I can possibly handle just by having one 10-foot long row on a trellis. So that's what I do. This bed will be carrots. This bed will be parsnips. Down here, I got one bed left down here. It's a 4x10. It's going to have kale and broccolini in it to start. Right, these things grow slowly. And at least I find anyway, right? So I find you can start, and you really can't harvest them for quite some time. Right? It takes a while for them to reach their full size, in my experience anyway. So I start them all, and just all the stuff in one bed, and then as they reach 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 inches tall, you can pluck them out of this bed. You plant a lot of them, sort of thing, and you can almost use it like a nursery. And you pluck them out and you put them other places, right? Like where I've got the garlic growing here, I tend to find I take my brassicas, kale, broccoli, and stuff like that. I move them into the garlic beds, right? So I've got a garlic bed here. It's already planted, already growing, although it's a bit frozen right now. I got another garlic bed here, right? This one's about 6 feet by 6, maybe 5 by 6. So those beds will have the kale moved into them. And any bed where I've planted an early harvested potato, I can move. I found even moving kale and broccolini like end of August, they can still put on a lot of growth in September, in September in particular, but September, October, they can put on a lot of growth. So if you have a potato bed that you've completely harvested, an early harvesting potato like a red Norland, which I've ordered this year as well, you can move kale or a broccolini or collard or anything like that. You can move that into one of those beds, and as long as your fall weather is agreeable, you can get something out of that used up potato bed, right? Because your potatoes they can be done beginning of August. Your garlic is pretty much done the beginning of August, so that bed's just sitting there. You might as well stick something in it and use the space, right? So that's what the logic there. All along the fence here, this is less than prime because it's against the forest, and that direction is south. So I plant things that take a while to grow that, you're never going to see things like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, cucumbers. None of those things will grow well against here. Things that can grow when it's a bit cold are good because in April and May, when a lot of the trees don't have their leaves yet, it still gets pretty good sun. All right, so I got lettuce and carrots and beets and potatoes, that sort of thing along here. All right, moving over this way, this bed sort of closer to the middle. I got a big bed here, and I think I explained earlier. I'm going to break that up into 2 larger beds. But anyway, one of them is going to be tomato with basil. The basil will be on the south side of the tomatoes so they can get all that sun. And I think I'm going to take these 2 beds, this bed and this one, and combine them and kind of make a lettuce bed. Again, a bed of lettuce can have something else in it eventually, right? 'Cause you plant your lettuce early in the season, and then by some point in late May or early June, the lettuce is done, and it's almost impossible to get lettuce growing again. You can do it, but it's a lot of work. Try to germinate lettuce in June. It makes much more sense to just, when you're thinning something else somewhere else, move that. Like I'm going to be starting leeks here. Maybe I could, when I'm thinning the leeks can be moved. So you're thinning the leeks, pluck them out, stick them in that bed when the lettuce is done. That sort of thing, right? But anyway, that's what's going on there. This bed here is a really big bed. It's like, I don't know, 7 feet by 8 feet long, something like that. That's all potatoes. This one will be zucchini. This one here is perennial. It's got strawberries in it. I think this will be the last year this is a strawberry bed. I'll get into that in a little bit. I'm going to put eggplant here, and all along this fence, I had, up around where you see this big tree, along the fence I had a grapevine, and it covered the whole fence. It went like, 20-something feet in either direction, and produced a lot of grapes, a lot of nice grape leaves that I can use for pickling and stuff. And I also throw a lot of shade on the garden, because remember, it's on the east and south, sort of southeast corner of the garden, so it's blocking sun. And the more the grapes would come in, the more it would do that. I, viciously and violently pulled the grapevine out of the ground there. Nice, mature, productive grape plant for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was casting shade and sort of hindering my garden's productivity here. But also, because it was against the fence, it was attracting porcupines and raccoons and things like that into my garden. So yeah, I don't think it's good to have any kind of delicious food hanging over your fence. You had a fence to keep animals out. You don't want to be hanging delicious food on the fence. It might not keep them out. So because that uh, grape tree isn't there anymore, what I think is going to happen is that I'll get more sunlight here. And so all along the fence, I've got about a 2 foot, from front to back, a garden bed that goes along the fence. That's about 2 feet, right? Because that's about comfortable to reach. 2 feet from front to back, but of course, many feet from left to right. So I think I'll have lots of options for planting things along here. Hopefully, I'm planting things that don't attract, rabbits and stuff that are wandering by. I'm going to try cilantro. This year I'm going to try, because I've lost some space, I'm going to try cilantro and parsnip. I think there'll be enough light to get a decent parsnip garden there. We'll see how that goes. I'll have a good one here because this is a great spot here. But yeah, I'm going to try parsnip along here, see how that goes. And there's a lot of space because it continues all the way along here, right? So that's what's going there. And right along the fence, you can't tell, but I got the big pond here. And I'm going to have leeks and Swiss chard and Brussels sprouts against the fence. And actually, I've made this bed. You can't see it here from this angle. But the bed that's at the base of this hill to the right of this pond, I've made it a little, what would you call it, deeper? The distance from where I'm standing to the fence is a greater distance. So let's say I've made it 30%. It's gotten a bit shorter because the pond is here, but in terms of like front to back, it's actually bigger that way. So it might be the same area or close to the same area, right? I just made it a bit longer to reach from front to back, a little less convenient in that sense, but a little more. I'm just trying to in the garden have less walking path and more bed, right? That makes sense, right? So I just noticed when I was like reorganizing everything, I'd lost all this space down here. I was just taking a look at this from, I climbed up the hill here. I was looking down on it saying, boy, I got a lot of walking path space. I don't need that much space for walking. You need the right amount. You need enough space to kneel and work your garden, right? That's for crouching and kneeling. You need enough space between the beds where you can kneel and crouch comfortably and work. So if they're really close together, it's kind of a pain. Like between these ones here, it's a bit tight. But there is a spacing that's too much space, right? If you've got a really good space for growing, you don't want to waste it all on paths. All right, so that's what's going on there. And down here, these new beds, because this one here is 8 by 8, I'm just going to make that all a big squash bed. This one, nice sunny spot, is going to be peppers. Below this is another bed. It needs to be made yet, but that's all asparagus. So can't do anything about that. It's got to be asparagus, right? Because you move asparagus, you shut it down for at least a year. I'm going to put beets up here. I got a 4 by 8 here. This bed is strawberries. I moved them last fall. I got a strawberry bed here, right? So at some point in August, remember strawberries, these are June bears. So at some point in June, these berries will be done producing. So at some point in July or August, I can move the strawberries along here because I want this whole end of the garden to be fruit, right? So these beds will be berry beds, right? Then I'll have my blue. I'll have strawberries low. Remember this, when you go into the right, this is south. So I got strawberries, and at the very bottom here, you can't see it, but there's a partridge berry, right? Lingonberry. So I'll have berries because they're low. Then I've got the bush berries that are a bit higher. And then at the very end, I'll have apple trees, which are even higher, right? Apple trees and pear trees. Just 3. There's only enough space for, it's probably only 2 or 3 trees is all there's space for, right? But again, there's higher, right? So that the sunlight gets to everything. Nothing's blocking sunlight, right? Better design for a garden. I'll put some onions here. And for this season, I'll have onions. But eventually these 3 will all be strawberry because we love strawberries. And I to pick strawberries, they're really expensive. They're getting so expensive to buy. And there's a place where you can drive to pick them where it's like over an hour's drive each way. So I'd rather just have them in my backyard. We like them so much, it's worth devoting the space, right? So doesn't look like I've got as much space devoted to onions this year because I don't. But remember, outside my garden enclosure, I have a couple places I can plant things. So I'm going to, figure out. There's always more space than there seems to be, right? So I've ordered 2 packs of onion sets. I'll have to be creative in figuring out where they can go, but I'll tell you right now, there's no point in planting onions unless you've got really good sun. You know, they'll always grow. Like, you can put them in the worst garden in the world and they'll grow. You know, you give them lousy sun and lousy soil, they still grow, but you won't get any size. I mean, you're planting onions, you want some big baseball-sized onions, right? If you want them to be big like that, they need good soil, lots of sun, all the sun you can give them. So that's what's going on with that. So through this process, I have figured out a place to put everything, and that's how I'm going to do it. So yeah, maybe think about doing something. You don't have to do it this way. You can use any kind of, you don't need, I mean, Excel is a, it's a data software, but I'm comfortable, you know, even for my YouTube channel, all the thumbnails, all the graphics, everything, I do it all in Excel because I know how to use Excel. You could use Word for this. You could use any kind of editing software, you know, anything for any document type software. You could, anything where you can paste in a picture and put little labels on the picture. That's all you need. And of course, you could just take a picture, print it off, and write on it the old-fashioned way. Or even draw a picture, right? Just draw a rough, if your garden's not as big as mine, or even if it is and you're just, you know, artistically inclined, you can draw. Which is all I really, early in spring, I usually have a very rough sketch. You know, I just have, you know, I just sort of copy this and I'll put that in my back pocket so I don't have to think about where things to go. And the whole reason you do this planting thing is that in the spring, when it's time to start planting, you don't have to think, right? You just go. There's a certain time of year where everything gets planted, and you know, I organize, maybe I'll show this season. I organize all my seed packs into April, May, June, July, that sort of thing. That's a bit, I don't use that monthly dates, but I use a sort of system like that, right? Planted early, planted mid-season, planted later in the season. I organize all the seed packs like that. So any evening I come home from work, if it's early in the season, I just grab all the stuff for early in the season. I grab my map, I go out in the garden and I try to get a couple things in the ground, right? I find it's a really easy way to get everything in the ground without being overwhelmed. You do all the thinking this time of year when you can really play with the ideas, and you just organize your seeds into when they have to go in the ground. And I mean, you're going to make some adjustments. You're going to change your mind. There's going to be, that is going to happen, of course, right? It's, you know, it's not just science, it's art in a sense, right? You're going to change your mind. But that's how I go about doing it. So I hope you found that video interesting, gave you some food for thought, and a sort of look into the inner workings of a gardener's mind. That's why I do these every single year to, you know, people, I know this is something people have trouble doing sometimes, and I suppose that's why they make these kinds of garden planning software. I've never found it useful, right? You don't need, I'm sure if you want to use that, go right for it. But companies that make these are always contacting me, asking me to pitch them and sell them. But I don't use them, so it's kind of hard to recommend something you don't think is worth anything. You know, all you need is any sort of you know, document software of any kind, or just a picture, a piece of paper with drawings on it, right? And a pencil, right? Paper and pencil is all you need to do this. So anyway, I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out those deals with my sponsors, my coupon code with Vessi Seeds, GAVS23 for free shipping this year, and my coupon code with Hudson Valley Seed Company, Maritime 10 for 10% off your order, in addition to whatever you know, whatever deals they've got running. They have different deals from time to time. You can just add that on, tack that on to the deal. Check out the details for that. So anyway, until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden, have fun planting your garden. See you next time. Hey, if you want to help support everything I'm doing here, go to Vessis.com to buy whatever you need for your garden this year. And use my coupon code GAVS23 to get free shipping as long as there's a pack of seeds in the order and there's no oversized items in the order. Check out the description box of this video for details. You can buy everything you need from Vessis. They have seeds, fruit bushes and trees, soil amendments, pest solutions, tools, clothing, and lots of other stuff too. So yeah, if you want to help support everything I'm doing here and they sell something you need, buy it from them using my coupon code, and happy gardening.